Yeah, baby. Antifreeze is an essential additive for automobiles. It lowers the freezing point while also increasing the boiling point of a water-based liquid. On its own, antifreeze will be harmless. Unfortunately, the world is full of people with malicious intentions. Antifreeze contains ethylene glycol. It has a sweet taste and is also odorless. It is very difficult to detect in the body. Just add a little antifreeze to your favorite drink and you've got a deadly combination on your hands. Antifreeze poisoning can lead to excruciatingly painful symptoms, including severe diarrhea and vomiting. If left untreated, it will eventually lead to acute kidney failure. For the perpetrator, there is one slight problem. Getting the perfect deadly dosage can be difficult. Administer too little, and the victim will linger for weeks or even months before death finally ends the torture. When administered in the right doses, death can occur in just 72 hours. False positives for antifreeze poisoning are fairly common. Therefore, culprit will almost always have a defense. Stay tuned and you will learn about some of the most stunning antifreeze poisoning cases in recent years. In 2005, 50-year-old Terrence Borg began suffering medical problems. He was hospitalized for a brief period. Terrence recovered and attempted to move forward with his life, in more ways than one. As you see, Terrence wasn't satisfied with his marriage to 63-year-old Marguerite. The mail carrier was involved in an affair with another woman. Authorities suggested that Terrence was on the verge of leaving his wife to start anew. Marguerite wasn't going to let that happen. Terrence and Marguerite visited Terrence's mother's house on September the 19th of 2005. Something went terribly wrong. Terrence was rushed to the hospital the following morning and died a short time later. Was it murder? The prosecution managed to convince the jury that it was. They claimed that Marguerite put antifreeze in her husband's drink during the visit to the mother-in-laws. The defense attorney suggested otherwise. He explained that Terrence was depressed about his deteriorating physical condition and committed suicide. The jury sided with the prosecution. They suspected that Marguerite had tried to kill her husband 6 months before. This time, she wasn't going to let that life insurance policy slip away. Borg was ultimately convicted of second-degree murder. In May of 2007, she was sentenced to 25 years to life in prison. Some people just can't leave well enough alone. That is the case for Julia Lynn Turner. Lynn was born on July the 13th, 1968. She was promptly given up by her birth mother and was subsequently adopted by the Womack family. After a tumultuous childhood, Julia began abusing drugs. By the 1990s, she had turned her life around. She was working as a 911 dispatcher for Cobb County, Georgia, when she attempted to become a police officer. She was turned down after failing a psychological exam. In 1992, Lynn married Cobb County police officer Maurice Glenn Turner. Her romance wouldn't last long. Monetary issues led to arguments, and the couple eventually started sleeping in different bedrooms. Around this time, Lynn set her sights on a Forsyth County firefighter by the name of Randy Thompson. Glenn was never aware of his wife's affair. Nevertheless, he had enough and planned to move out and file for divorce by 1995. Glenn would never escape. On March 2, 1995, he was rushed to the emergency room after complaining of flu-like symptoms. Glenn recovered and was sent home. The following day, though, he was found dead. The cause of death was ruled natural due to irregular heartbeat. Lynn wasted no time moving on. She moved in with Randy and began enjoying the $153,000 she received from her husband's death. She also got his pension. Lynn and Randy established a family. They bought a home and had 2 kids. The happiness wouldn't last. Marital problems convinced Randy to move out by 2000. In early 2001, Lynn attempted to rekindle her relationship with her husband. Randy began feeling ill. He went to the emergency room due to a stomach ache and constant vomiting. Lynn felt bad and made her husband some Jell-O. Her good deed came with malicious intentions. Randy Thompson was dead by the next day. Since Randy's $200,000 insurance policy had lapsed, Lynn only collected $36,000 from her boyfriend's death. Again, the cause of death was classified as an irregular heartbeat. Detectives sprung into action. Blood tests conducted on Thompson found ethylene glycol-based antifreeze in his system. It was discovered that Lynn had visited an animal shelter to inquire about ways to put down a stray animal and what poison would be effective. After his body was exhumed, Lynn Turner's body was found to contain ethylene glycol as well. Crime scene photos from Turner's death showed antifreeze in the garage. Lynn was arrested. She was eventually convicted of murdering both Lynn Turner and Randy Thompson. She was sentenced to life without parole. However, Turner wasn't finished just yet. She had one more poisoning to carry out. This time, she set her sights on herself. Lynn would die in prison on August the 30th of 2010. Her death was considered suicide by overdose of blood pressure medication. While the ending is fitting, many argue that the 42-year-old took the easy way out. Stacey Ruth Castor took a page out of Lynn Turner's book. However, Castor showed even more disregard for human life. The similarities between Castor and Turner are stunning. Their choice of murder weapon is identical. Stacey met Michael Wallace in 1985. She was 17 at the time. Castor was convinced that she had found her true love. The couple married and had a daughter, Ashley, in 1988. A second daughter, Bree, was born in 1991. Castor worked for an ambulance dispatch company. Wallace worked as a mechanic. Nevertheless, the family had little money. On the surface, it appeared to be a good family. Behind the scenes, it was anything but. Stacey felt that her husband showed too much favoritism to Bree. She attempted to make up for it by becoming best friends with Ashley. The couple's relationship began to deteriorate. It was speculated that both were having affairs. In late 1999, something changed for Wallace. He became unsteady on his feet, coughed more frequently, and appeared swollen. His family urged him to seek medical attention. Before he could, he passed away in early 2000. While doctors believed Wallace died of a heart attack, his sister requested an autopsy. Stacey refused. Stacey went on to marry David Castor in 2003. David owned an air conditioning installation and repair company. Stacey was his lover and office manager. Around 2 p.m. on a day in August of 2005, the local sheriff's office received a frightening call from Stacey. She had argued with her husband before he locked himself in their bedroom. She was worried. After all, according to Stacey, he had been depressed. Authorities arrived and eventually kicked in the door. They would discover a bizarre plot that would paint Stacey as one of the cruelest women at the time. Near Castor's body, detectives found a container of antifreeze and a glass containing a bright green liquid. Initially, the coroner suspected suicide. That would change when Stacey's fingerprints were found on the glass. Things got worse for the Black Widow when detectives found a turkey baster that had David's DNA on the tip. They suspected that Stacey had force-fed antifreeze to her husband when he was too weak to consume it on his own. Detectives wiretapped her house. They set up cameras near the house and next to the husband's gravesites. Stacey never visited those graves. With few options, investigators exhumed Wallace's body. Toxicology screening determined that Wallace had also been killed with antifreeze. Stacey began to panic. She called her best friend and daughter Ashley, who agreed to visit. They shared a drink together. The following day, Stacey convinced Ashley to visit and drink with her again. This time, Ashley was given a nasty tasting drink. 17 hours later, Bree found Ashley comatose on her bed. Stacey called 911. Bree left her sister for a short period. When she returned, she found a suicide note. The note appeared to be a murder confession. Did Ashley kill her father and stepfather? Or did Stacey just have a few more tricks up her sleeve? Ashley survived. However, she was just minutes from death. It was later determined that Ashley was fed a cocktail of crushed pills, vodka, orange juice, and Sprite. She drank the mixture because she trusted her mother, her best friend. Stacey Castor was arrested and put on trial. Prosecutors claimed that money was the number one motive. They suspected that Stacey killed her husbands to collect their life insurance and estates. On her computer, they found several drafts of Ashley's so-called suicide note. The defense attempted to poke holes in the prosecution's case. It was just too little, too late. The trial lasted 4 weeks before Stacey was ordered to serve 51 years before becoming eligible for parole. It was basically a life sentence. Stacey Castor became known as M809G0209. Her earliest possible release date was set for 2055. She would have been on the verge of turning 88. Stacey would be released much earlier. She was found dead in her cell on June 11, 2016. It was later determined that Castor had died of a heart attack. Only the quiet ones will be left. My mother, my little sister, and me. Sometimes 2 heads are better than one. They may also be more callous. This certainly rings true for Rachel and her mother, Diane Staudte. The mother and daughter pair would go on a poisoning spree that would nearly wipe out their entire immediate family. The incredible hatred for one's own family would leave Missouri stunned. Bettering one's life is always a good idea. Of course, Diane Staudte took the wrong path in achieving that goal, and she drug her own daughter down with her. In April of 2012, Diane's husband, Mark, was found dead. Her son, Sean, died in September. The Greene County Medical Examiner's Office classified both deaths as natural. Diane and Rachel would have probably gotten away with it if only they would have stopped there. Diane just had one more problem to remove from her life. In June of 2013, Diane's daughter Sarah was hospitalized. The family's pastor knew something was wrong. The pastor told police that Diane was responsible for Sarah's illness and the earlier deaths. Diane and Rachel were charged with murder. Prosecutors suspected that Diane masterminded the crime. A probable cause statement used to charge her indicated that Diane was not satisfied with her family. Her husband, she hated him. She claimed her son was worse than a pest. As for Sarah, she was unemployed and had student loans. To Diane, this justified her actions. Was Rachel a willing participant, or was she afraid to suffer a similar fate? When Rachel was arrested, they found a poem in her purse. It finished with the following line: "Only the quiet ones will be left. My mother, my little sister, and me." The poem was eerily accurate. Sarah survived the attack. However, she suffered brain damage and was placed in an assisted living facility. Rachel will serve 42 and a half years before being eligible for parole. Diane pleaded guilty to 2 counts of murder and was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. While the Amish do not drive automobiles, an Amish pastor from Kentucky found another use for the deadly chemical. The case of Samuel Bornger proves that anyone can become a maniacal killer. In fact, this may be the most disturbing case of all. Authorities were shocked when Samuel spun a tale for them in January of 2016. Locals would be stunned by what the cabinet maker was capable of. Samuel told authorities that he had put antifreeze into vitamin drinks and gave them to his wife Anna. Anna would eventually fall into a coma. Before her death, the Amish pastor admitted to using a syringe to inject battery acid into her rectum. She died in late 2006. Samuel was sentenced nearly 10 years after his wife's death. He received 25 years in prison on charges of second-degree murder. Court officials said that Samuel would be required to serve a minimum of 85% of his sentence. His brutality will never be forgotten. Overwhelming greed, pure lust, intense hatred, and antifreeze can be a deadly combination. These deeds are callous and calculating. They're even more frightening due to the fact that the murder weapon can be purchased almost anywhere, and you won't know your demise is near until it is far too late. It also goes to show that we are always at someone else's mercy. Next time, you should think twice before accepting a cold drink from a friend or family member.